right, welcome to our week 13 live classroom. We are going to do two different things today. First off, we are going to go through our practice final exam. You have the key accessible to you, and so I won't go through everything in it, but I'll mainly go through some of the programming parts of it that might be hard to understand just with the key. So we're going to do that, and then this week we are doing chapter 10 again. So we're still working on arrays, and so we're just going to go ahead and go through some practice programs after we finish looking at our exam prep. So without any further ado, let's look at this. So real quick, let me pull up our course. CIT160. If you look at the announcements for our class, that's where I put this. So our week 13 announcement. Right here we have links to a practice final exam and the practice final exam key. So what I would recommend that you do is you take this practice final exam as if it were an exam, and then after that go ahead and look at the key and compare your answers with it. Okay. But if you feel pretty comfortable with everything in the practice exam, then you should be just fine on your actual exam. So let's go ahead and look at this. All these are multiple choice. If you need to go back and look at your book at any one of these, if you can't remember what a power supply does or what electrical circuits or whatever these, anything like this, if you can't remember what they are, that's fine. Go ahead and look back in your book, check out the key for this exam, but we're going to skip over this.
Not sure if it's just my computer, but your mic is kind of cutting out.
Oh, that's not good to hear. Give me 1 second. All right. So we're going to skip over these first few since you guys can just look in the book and look at the key for those. Number 4. Write the HTML tag and its attributes for creating a div, which can be used for output from JavaScript. Okay, so for creating a div, we all know how to do that. We've done it a bunch of different times. Let me pull up a different window here. So if I look at this file, let me just delete all of that. Okay, so I have an HTML file here, and if I wanted to create a div, all I'd have to do is make an opening tag for it and a closing tag for it. But this will not be enough to give you credit for this question. Any question like this, when it says which can be used for output from JavaScript, it means we have to have an ID so that we can isolate this div and actually use it in our JavaScript. So I could put whatever I wanted to in here, as long as I have a unique ID. Your program is not going to care about that. You know, usually we'll see something like output or output div or something along those lines. But technically this out could be anything you wanted to, and anything you wanted it to be. But anytime you see a question like that, go ahead and just write out the entire div tag, opening and closing, unless it tells you otherwise. So right here it says, the HTML tag and its attributes for creating a div, which can be used for output from JavaScript. So you would want it to look exactly like this right here. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. What does the parse int function do? All right, on this test, you guys are allowed the same resources that you have had with your previous tests, which means everything in this domain, w3schools.com, is free game during your test. So if you really can't remember what parse int does, I would recommend coming into here and hitting the search and just typing in parse int. And look at that, JavaScript parse int function. And what it does, parses a string and returns an integer. Okay, so a lot of people are like, man, why do you allow W3 Schools or resources on the test? And the answer for that is because when you're working in a professional environment, you'll be able to use Google. Okay, if you can't remember what parse int does, or you need to figure out how to convert a string into a number, you could just Google it. Okay, I don't let you use Google on the test because you could find the answers for the test, possibly. Okay, but I do let you use W3 Schools because these are resources that will always be available to you, except for perhaps inside of a job interview environment. But anyways, parse int, that's all it does. It converts a string and returns an integer. So if I looked at this, let's go ahead and make a little input right here. And I'm going to have an ID of user input. And then I'm going to have a button. And on click, I'm just going to say run function. Oops. Here I need a script tag. I say function, run function, document.get element by ID, user input dot value. And I'm going to say x equals that. And we're going to go ahead and put that back out into the page document.get element by ID, output dot inner HTML equals x. All right, so right here we'll have our input, and right here we'll have our output. And let's see how this runs. So I'm just going to copy this file path, and we're going to stick it in the browser and run it. We have an input and a button. I'm going to say 55 and hit this button, and you see 55 pops up right there, the way that you expect it to be. But here's the thing. If I go into my sources tab, and I put a breakpoint right here, and I hit this button again to call run function, look at what x is. It's a string of 55. Okay, so if I wanted to actually do math or something like that with this 55, I would have to convert it into a number. So our parse int parses a string and returns an integer. So I would come into here and I could say var int x equals parse int of x. And I would just pass in x into that function. In this case, it would pass in that 55 string. And let's see what it would do. And refresh this, type in 55, run the function. X is a string of 55, int x is 55, okay? And if I wanted to do that in a single line of code, I easily could. I could just put parse int right here, oops, and it would parse whatever comes back here, which was a string of 55. So it would do the exact same thing, okay? All right, let's look at our next one. I'm gonna close these. All right, given the following JavaScript code, what, if anything, will the computer output for the user to see? Okay, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, probably multiple times today. It's great to think through these things, and you should. You should walk it through in your mind first, and then you should check it. You have the ability to write code during this exam and run it in your browser during this exam. So if you think that's going to take a long time, then plan a long time for you to take this test, because it's your final exam. Okay, because if you have the time to run these things, then you can, and you can basically know for sure when you get a question right or wrong because you can run it. Okay, but let's walk through it first. X is 3, Y is 7. If X is greater than 7, false. So I jump down here to this else statement, and I would alert terrible. Okay, that's my thought process. Now, I'm going to copy this whole thing. If it lets me. This PDF's horrible. Your test will be better. It's not in a PDF. And I'm going to paste it inside of my program. Okay. Let me just format this nice and pretty. That was inside of that. That should be tabbed over. And that should be tabbed over. It should look pretty similar to what we had over there. Yep. Okay, one thing with these PDFs is it drags over these funky like Microsoft Word characters, okay? And so we just have to change those into quotes like that. And then we'll have that error. Okay. Once this is here, I should be able to just run this function. I'll probably have to declare these. I should be able to just run this function and see what happens. Well, they didn't declare it. Let's actually not declare it. Okay, so I'm going to come back over here, refresh, and I'll put a breakpoint right there and hit my button to run the function. X is 3, Y is 7. Is X greater than 7? I can highlight this and see that that is equal to false. So I hit F10 and it jumps straight into terrible and it alerts terrible. Okay, so you can just put this into a text editor. If I wanted to, I could also copy and paste this exact same thing oops, straight into the console. So I could come into the console and paste it and run it, and you can see it outputs terrible because this console is just a little JavaScript executor. Okay, I can just put in any JavaScript that I want to. I could be like, oh, what's 20 modulus 4? And you can see it's 0 because 4 goes into 25 times evenly, you know, but I can execute any JavaScript in here. So this code, I could just execute inside of the console as well. All right. All right, let's look at our next one. Given the following JavaScript code, what will the value of result be? Okay, same thing. Let's look through it first, come up with our own answer, and then let's run it so that we can know for sure. A equals 7, B equals 3, C is equal to 11. Yeesh, look at all that. All right, order of operations holds multiplication, division, and modulus at an equal level of precedence. So B times C would happen first, which is 33. And then A times C would be 77. Modulus 2 would happen next. So 77 modulus 2 would be 1 because 2 evenly goes into 76, and we'd have 1 left over. So I have A plus 33 minus 1. So that'd be 39 is my guess for this one. But again, let's run it, and then we don't have to just wonder, but we should run it. So again, I'm just going to come over here, throw it into the console, run it. Oops, didn't like something. Oh, it's another funky character from our PDF. It's this little minus sign. So I'm actually going to copy this into my text editor. And you can see it doesn't like this invalid character. So I'm just going to put in a valid minus for it. And then we should be good to go. Copy that, run it here. And if I wanted to see what the result was, I could just type in result, and it's 39. Okay. And same thing, if I didn't want to do it here in the console, then I could just have this run function button, have it run this, and then I could just say alert result. It would be a really easy way to see what result is going to be at the end of this. And I could just come over here to my document, refresh it, hit the button, take my breakpoint out, and you can see my result was 39. Okay. All right, let's go to our next one. Given the following JavaScript code, how many times will the computer display the word ice? So I equals 7, do alert ice, I++, while I is less than or equal to 14. Okay, so I is 7, and I would go up from 7 to 13, or to 14 while it's equal to. So I think that would be 8 times, because it would alert at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Should be 8. So that's my guess. Again, let's go run it, because I make lots of mistakes, especially with simple things like this. And this time, I actually want to see it with the debugger. I think it'll be easier to see. Take out these funky characters. And we should be good to run that. Let me just tab this over for my own sanity. Okay. Where'd my window go? All right. Recopy this file path. I don't know where my window went. And paste it in here. Oh, it was right there. All right. I'm going to hit F12. Go over to my sources. Put a breakpoint in there. And hit my button. All right. I is 7. That's once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it was 8. Now, let's say, I don't think you do, but let's say on your test you had one that was like, well, I is less than or equal to 500, and you didn't want to go through that 500 times. What I would do is every time I have an alert ice, just for me to test this, I would say var count equals 0. And then I would say count plus plus. Oops. Okay. And then afterwards, after that whole loop, I would just alert count. Okay. So let's try that real quick. I'm going to comment out that alert, and I'm going to refresh this. I'm going to take out my breakpoint. I'm going to hit my button, and it says 8. Okay, because every time this alert was here, I incremented my count by 1. So instead of me counting it and pushing the button every time, I'm just like, hey, just add 1 to count, and then I'll alert that total count at the very end. So make it really easy to test something like that. All right, let's look at our next one. What does the JavaScript keyword break do? Okay, what I would do, since you guys have W3 Schools available to you, is I would come into here and I would type in JavaScript break. JavaScript break statement. Okay. It says the break statement exits a switch statement or a loop for, in, while, do, while. When the break statement is used with the switch statement, it breaks out of the switch block. This will stop the execution of more execution of code and or case testing inside the block. When it's used inside of a loop, it breaks the loop and continues executing the code after the loop if there is any code. Okay. So again, if you know how to use W3 Schools, if you know how to find things in here, it's totally legal and you guys can use it. All right, let's look at our next one. Given the following function definition, function obfuscate xyz, return x times 3 plus y minus z, and the following call, what value will be displayed to the user? So x is being alerted. That is what will be displayed to the user. So let's walk through this. We are passing in 8, 2, and 13 into obfuscate, regardless of what these are called in these variables. It's 8, 2, and 13. We're passing these values. So 8, 2, and 13 is up here at the top of obfuscate. So it'd be 8 times 3 is first, so that'd be 24. And then plus 2 would be 26, minus z, which is 13, would be 13. Okay? Again, let's run this. All right? So I'm going to copy this whole thing and paste it in here. Goodbye function, run function. And let's move all this over so it's nice and easy to see what's going on. Don't need that. What does that look like? Oh, and the following call. Okay, so maybe I will leave my run function here. Say function, run function. And we'll put all of this inside of it. Okay, so run function will get called when the user hits the button. From there, we'll call obfuscate, just like the question is asking for. Make that a valid minus symbol. And we should just alert whatever is returned from obfuscate. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. Come back over here and refresh. And I'm just going to hit the button, and it says 13. Okay, so why was declared as 13? When we called run function from the button, we passed in 8, 2, and 13. They came up in x, y, and z as 8, 2, and 13. It returned 13 here, and we alerted that value that was returned. Okay. All right. Next one. Given the following declaration, we have a list. What is the value of list index of list.length divided by 2 plus list.index of 4? All right. Remembering that lists are always zero-based, let's go ahead and just count out the indices. So I'd have index of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So list.length would be 6, okay? 6 divided by 2 would be 3. So this is saying list at index of 3, which would be 0, 1, 2, and 3, which would be 9. So we're saying 9 plus list at index of 4, which is 7. So it should be 16. All right. Again, let's run it in case we made a mistake. Oops. And let's come over here. I don't think I need this obfuscate function anymore or any of that. Let's paste in there. Oops. And to test this out nice and easy, I'm just going to say alert this whole thing. Okay. And that should work for us. All right. Let's go ahead and run that. Refresh. I'm actually going to put a breakpoint in here this time. I'm going to run this function. You can see list. We have our 6 elements in there. We have a length of 6. If I want to see what list.length is, I can hover over this. If I want to see what that arithmetic gives us, list.length divided by 2, we have 3. I can highlight from list to the end of this to see what is at index of 3, and it looks like it's 9. All right, I can also see what list to index of 4 is, which is 7. And then I can highlight over this whole thing to see what 9 plus 7 will be, and it's 16. And then we'll go ahead and alert, and there's our 16. Okay. All right. I know I'm going kind of fast. Do you guys have any questions?
So good.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's look at our next one. Desk check the following code. Guys, debuggers are huge for this. I would never do a desk check without a debugger, okay? All right, var j equals 7, sum equals 0, sum sq equals 0. And while j is less than 11, plus j, sum plus equals j modulus 3. If j is greater than 9, sum squared plus equals j squared, or j times j. All right, and we have to desk check this whole thing. So every time any one of these values is going to change, we're going to write one down. So j would be 7 right here, sum would be 0, and sum squared would be 0. The next thing to change would be sum on this first line right here, which would be j modulus 3. 3 goes into 7 twice with 1 left over. So sum would go from 0 to 1. I'd put a 1 right here. The next thing to change would be sum squared, all right, which would be, oh, except, nope, because j is not greater than 9 at this point. All right, so we come back up here, j plus plus, j would go up to 8, so I'd write that down here. And then 8 modulus 3 would be 2. We'd add that on a sum, which would give us 3 for our sum. 8 is not greater than 9. We go back up here, j is up to 9. I put that down here. All right, 9 modulus 3 would be 0. So sum plus equals 0 would still be 3, what it's currently at. And then 9 is not greater than 9, so we jump back up here. J is equal to 10. 10 modulus 3 is 1. We'd add 1 on to our sum, giving us a sum of 4. And then 10 greater than 9, that's true, which would give us 10 times 10 equals sum squared, and that would give us 100 for that sum squared. Okay, so I just kind of walk through this whole thing. And then after I have a pretty good idea of what it would be, I would want to run it. Because with something like that, it'd be really easy to make a mistake at some point in there. So let me just put all of this into my function that's going to run. All right, that's good, right? All right, let's come back into our program. I'm going to refresh, and I'm going to put a breakpoint right there and hit our button. Okay, and I would just write these out into that little table as we go. So j is 7, sum is 0, sum squared is 0, sum is 1, come back down, j is 8, sum is 3, j is 9, sum is 3, j is 10, sum is 4, sum squared is 100, j is 11, sum is 4, sum squared is 100, okay? And I would just write all those in as I come across them. So, all right, let's look at our next one. Write a JavaScript function named reverse list that takes one parameter named the list. The function should return a list of the elements in the opposite order of the list. For example, if the function were invoked as follows, var reversed equals reverse list 14279, the reversed would have the value 97241. Okay, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Just like your assignments from last week, all this is asking for is a single function. So you wouldn't have to type in a whole HTML document if you didn't want to. What we're going to do, because it does, having an HTML document does make it easy to test. So I'm just, since I already have a little document here that I'm using, I'm just going to use it. I'm going to call it user list. Actually, it might tell us what that's supposed to be. The list. Okay, glad I checked. So we have function reverse list, the list, and we're going to call it with this. So I put this inside of run function. Reversed equals reverse list. Wow, there's a typo in my practice exam. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, we'd call that, and in here I'm just going to alert reversed. Okay, so whatever value is returned from reverse list, we're just going to assign it to reversed and alert it. What is it saying here? Oh, all it cares about is the reverse list function. So this run function doesn't matter. All it cares about is this returning the correct array, the reversed array, okay? So I have the list. Let's go ahead and make a loop. And for each time I loop through here, I'm just going to add to a new array. So I'm going to make a new array. I'll go ahead and say var reversed list equals an empty array. And then I'll say for I equals the list dot length while I is greater than or equal to 0, I plus plus. Okay, now one thing here, list.length in this case would be 5, and the greatest index would be 4. So I'm actually going to say the list.length minus 1. Okay, because that'll give me my last index in my array. And I'll say while I is greater than or equal to 0, oops, I minus minus, because we're going to decrement for this guy. All right, and then I'm just going to say reversed list dot push the list at index of I. Return reversed list. Okay. So in this case, we would start at index of 4. All right, because the list dot length would be 5, minus 1 would be 4. And so the list index of I would be 9, and we're going to push that 9 into reverse list at its first index, index of 0. I decrements, it goes down to 3. We come back through here. The list at index of 3 is 7, and we'd push 7 into reverse list. So currently reverse list would have 9 and 7. And so you can see we're just going to go through and add these from the end of that list onto the beginning of this list, in effect giving us our reversed list. Now, you'll notice if you Google how to do this in JavaScript, there is a nice function built into JavaScript that will help you with this. Where this is a programming class, not a JavaScript class, I'm going to steer clear of those because I want you to understand the concept of how it works. Okay, not just what function in JavaScript would do this for me. All right, so let's run this, make sure it works. I'm gonna refresh this and hit my button. If this works, we should see an alert of 97241. And there's our alert, 97241. Okay, and if we wanted to see more of what was going on, I could put a breakpoint right here, and I could look at the list, and I could see that its length is 5. The list.length minus 1 would give us an index of 4. The list at index of I of 4 would be 9, and reverse list currently has nothing in it, but when we push 9 into it, then it just added that to the beginning. So I could walk through this if I wanted to and see everything that's going on. Okay. But again, all you'd have to submit for that question is just this function that returns the reverse list, and that's it. Okay. All right. Let's look at our next one. Write a JavaScript function called overachievers, which takes one parameter, a list named numbers, and returns the count of how many elements of the list are greater than the 0th element of the list. Use the following header, function overachievers numbers. So let's come over here. Overachievers numbers. We're going to call this from here. And so in this case, let's go ahead and make this a 3. All right, and we just want to check to see how many of these array items are greater than the first one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I equals 0, while I is less than numbers.length. We can take that out. I plus plus. I'm going to have a count though, so I'm going to say var count equals 0. And in here, we want to check to see if something is greater than the first element. So actually, I don't need to loop through that 0, 1. I can just start at 1, and I can say if numbers at index of I is greater than numbers at index of 0. And then we're just going to return our... Let's go back and look at this just to make sure we did that right. One parameter, a list, and count how many elements of the list are greater than the first. Okay. and it returns the count. Okay, so I think we should be good. Here, I'm going to rename this to be called achiever count. Okay, and let's run this real quick just to make sure that it works. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint right there, hit my button. Count is 0. Numbers.length is 5. Okay, and it'll check. Numbers at index of 1, which is 4. Is that greater than numbers at index of 0, which is 3? Yes. So we'd increment our count. Count is up to 1. Next one, index is 2. Numbers at index of 2 is 2. And is that greater than 3? Nope, so we skip it. And we just keep on looping through until we're all done. And then we alerted 3. So 3 items in this array are greater than the first, which is true because 4, 7, and 9 are the 3 that are greater than the first element. All right, let's look at our next one. Write a JavaScript function called Gravitational Pull, which will calculate and return the gravitational attraction between 2 objects with the following header. Function Gravitational Pull, M1, M2, and S. The equation used is f of g, m1, m2 over s2. All right, let's do this. Just a disclaimer for you guys, this will be harder than anything that you actually find on your test, okay? I'm pretty sure everything that you find on your test is something that you could logically think through. I have no idea what gravitational pull is. I know what it is, but yeah, just so you guys know. All right, but let's do this real quick. So F is the gravitation attraction, the value to be returned in newtons. M1 and M2 are the masses of the 2 objects. Okay. And S is the distance between the 2 objects. And those 3 values have to be passed into our gravitational pull function. So let's go ahead and make that. Paste that right there. And inside of here, we're going to call gravitational pull, and we're going to pass in the mass of 2 objects. Let's say someone is 150 pounds and someone is 200 pounds, and they're 50 feet apart. Okay, and we'll call this pull. We'll call it F. In here, we're going to return F. And I'm just going to say var F equals, and let's get started. We have G. G is the gravitational constant. Okay, so let's grab this. And I'm going to say, let's declare that constant first. I'll say var G equals that. But this is supposed to be an exponent, 10 to the power of negative 11. So I'm going to say math.pow 10 to the negative 11th. That has to be an asterisk. Okay, that should give us G. And if we look at our equation here, it says G times M1 times M2 over S squared. So let's go ahead and say var numerator equals G times M1 times M2. Var denominator equals S times S, and F equals numerator divided by denominator. Okay. And then we return F. So to do that, if I wanted to, I could just put this right there and make sure that's in parentheses. Otherwise, that division would take place before the denominator is calculated. And I could take both of those out. Again, if I wanted to shorten it up, I could just put this right there. Okay, and I just return those. And if I really wanted to shorten it up more, I could put all of this into parentheses and put that in the place of G. All of those do the exact same thing. Okay, so I have var F. Again, if I just wanted to test this, I could put this in place of F. Okay, really shorten that up. But again, we're just trying to write the function gravitational pull. All right, so let's go ahead and test that. Of course, I have no idea what this number is even going to mean. Okay, yeah, see, I don't know much about gravitational pull. What I was saying earlier about your test, at least you'll be able to know if you're coming up with the right answer or not. This I would have to Google. I'd be like, what's the gravitational pull between objects? Because I have no idea. But yeah, any questions about this one, you guys?
Nope.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see what else we got. That was it. Okay, so that's it for your practice exam. You guys are probably clear on everything that is expected for your practice exam. It's the same as your other ones. You can use your book. You can use iLearn. You can use previous programs that you've written. You can use W3 Schools. You can't use Google. You can't ask anyone for help. It's not timed, but you have to take it all in one sitting. So same as all your other tests. All right. Well, let's go ahead